Right, it's 7:20 now here in Paris. Let's move on with a look through the day's newspapers here in France with Flo. Good morning to you.
Kat.
And today, France still very much in shock after that double murder of a police commander and his partner just outside Paris. Many of the newspapers paying tribute to those victims.
That's right. Le Figaro says they were the victims of Islamist barbarity. If we take a look at the front page of Le Figaro today, you can see a photo here of the two victims, Jean-Baptiste Salvin, Jessica Schneider. You can see, excuse me, Le Figaro with that black background there in mourning. They were killed in the name of Daesh. Daesh, the name that French people use to refer to the Islamic State group that's on the front page of Le Parisien. They were savagely assassinated because they are police officers, according to Le Parisien.
And we've been learning quite a lot more about these two victims. A lot of public tributes being printed up in the newspapers.
That's right. Le Parisien, once again, if we take a look at that, they've interviewed some of their family and colleagues. You can see here referring to them by their nicknames, JB and Jess. They were appreciated, well-loved by everyone who knew them. They were known for their professionalism, their enthusiasm, their kindness. And Lacroix points out that this is a particularly tough blow for the police. You can see the police has been hit at the heart, and you can see that black mourning mask there on that police symbol there. Now, it's particularly tough because, of course, the police has been solicited so much since last year's terrorist attacks, the Charlie Hebdo attacks, the November attacks. They've been on high alert, and now they've really been targeted themselves, hit at the heart.
And the spotlight also on the man who carried out those killings, Larossi Abala. We now know his name. And we're getting to know quite a lot more details about him. It seems that he wasn't unknown to the authorities by any means.
That's right. He had reportedly been under surveillance after he was incarcerated in 2013 for terrorist-related activities. This is an interesting article in Mediapart. That's an investigative website that says that he had been planning to target France since 2011. And Mediapart has got their hands actually on an email that he wrote to a friend who was reportedly tempted to go wage jihad in Pakistan. And in this email that dates back to February 2011, he wrote, "Do you really think they need us there?" And this email has been getting a lot of attention. You can read about it in Le Parisien as well. That has a quote from this email. Essentially, in this email, he said, Allah is going to give us the means to raise our flag here, and we must begin that job. You can see that quote there. We have to start cleaning up these kuffar, that's the word for non-believers. And Le Monde is also reporting about the fact that he had been reportedly plotting this attack for quite some time. You can see that they're saying that he had written down a list of addresses of police stations in some notebooks.
And it really does seem to be quite unbelievable. So many times when we've heard about attacks of this kind, we then later find out that people have indeed been suspected of being potential terrorists, and they have slipped through the net. There is a lot of criticism coming out of the government. That's
right, particularly from the right wing and the very far right wing, the National Front. They've been saying that the government is being too lax when it comes to terrorist suspects. You can read about it here in the business paper Les Echos. The right wing is raising its voice because, if he had already been imprisoned for terrorist-related activities, if he was under surveillance, what happened? Now, like many of the terrorists that took part in the November attacks, he was on something called the Fichier S. It's actually a terrorist watch list. So a lot of people are saying, if he was on this list, how come he wasn't under more surveillance? And there have been repeated calls, to actually take all the people on this Fichier S, this terror watch list, and actually intern them in camps.
Although a lot of people are saying that it's actually, in fact, it's not even people saying it. It's proven that quite a lot of these people are radicalized in prisons.
That's right. And also, you can read more about it in Le Monde, which says that, putting these people in these kind of camps is completely unfeasible for several reasons. First of all, there are about 2,000 people on this list, with varying degrees of dangerosity, perhaps. And also, it's completely against the French Constitution. It's completely against the European Convention of Human Rights to just lock people up preventively as if it were a mental institution or something.
All right, let's move on across the Atlantic to the United States. No happier news story that we're reporting on there, unfortunately. The attack on that gay nightclub in Orlando. the papers really quite worried about what this means in terms of Islamist violence spreading around the world. Some of them really are seeing a trend.
That's right, and it's a trend that's very concerning to a lot of papers, a lot of people in general. Let's take a look at 20 Minutes, which relays this feeling that ISIS is multiplying. It seems like there are more and more of these kind of lone wolf attacks that are inspired by the Islamic State group. Unclear exactly just how much the Islamic State group has commanded these attacks, etc. Libération has a word for it. They're talking about local terrorism, terrorisme de proximité. Kind of like your local supermarket, you have your local terrorism, and Libération is very concerned by this growing trend.
All right, and let's move on to some other front page news here in France. More mass demonstrations yesterday against the government's labour reforms. There's quite a lot of disagreement, though, about just how many people are still supporting this and indeed turning out in the streets. The numbers are wildly different, aren't
very
they?
Different. Well, it's kind of a running joke that whenever there's a demonstration in France, the official figures are very different from the figures put forward by
anywhere around the world, not just France.
Not just France, but this time it's really incredible. This is L'Humanité, the communist paper, so they think it was amazing, enormous, incredible. There were 1.3 million people who demonstrated across the country. Of course, official figures are much lower. The Ministry of the Interior has said there were about 130 people. It's not 130,000 people, not 130, demonstrating across the country, which is much lower than the peak of the demonstrations in March. The 31st of March. Now, unfortunately, these demonstrations ended in violence in Paris, and a lot of people wonder, is the demonstration movement running out of steam? Are they becoming more and more desperate? Is that why we're seeing more and more violence? For instance, the children's hospital Necker was vandalized here in Paris, and this has raised a lot of criticism, and people are wondering if this could turn public opinion.
And indeed, whether the unions, of course, not the majority attacking children's hospitals, but of course they perhaps need to get a grip on the minority that are doing these sorts of things. I think this one's going to roll on a little bit longer, isn't it? Thanks so much for now, Flo Villamino. He'll be back later on looking through the international papers for us as well.